Does anybody else's gran go on really random websites like Wish and buy them really random shit? Apparently, this is like a hairbrush cleaner. That's disgusting. You don't need to see that. Hi everyone! This video is going to be a hot mess, like me, like everything on this channel. I am trying to be clever and give you guys statistics, but I am just and nothing's coming out right. So we're just gonna go with this. I'm gonna try and do it as quickly as possible, little editing as possible. That's probably not gonna happen. Let's get into it. So in January, I decided to start doing TBRs again. And I am surprised. Genuinely, I am pretty impressed with myself for how much I followed my TBR. So my TBR was 8 books, and of those 8, I read 5, so I am pretty pleased with myself. So just briefly, because I feel like wrapping up the month should include talking about the books on my TBR I didn't get to briefly. So I didn't read Every Heart a Doorway, I didn't read The State of Grace, and I didn't get around to my reread of Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. I very much still want to get to these books ASAP, so I'm kind of rolling them over into February. I have done my February TBR and these aren't on it, but I am still like very much like I need to get to these really soon. And with the booktube games going on, I should really be getting through so many pages that I can get to these. We will see what happens. So some quick statistics for you guys, because I have actually started tracking my reading on like a spreadsheet. Read with Cindy shared that was like how she kept track of things, and I found it really helpful, because before, when I do wrap-ups, I'd have to go on Goodreads and be like, what did I rate this book and like what month did, like when you get to like the end of a month and you're like, wait, I read so many books, did I read that this month? And you've got to click on it and find out. So much effort. The spreadsheet is highlighted for the month, all the info is there. It's great, I love it. How long will I keep it up? Probably not very long. Of the 9 books that I read, 6 were physical copies, 2 were ebook and actually NetGalley arcs, so yay me getting on top of NetGalley. I say getting on top of, I have like 500 NetGalley books to get to, so 2 is nothing. And I read or listened to 1 audiobook. I say listened because I do not need people coming at me for like, audiobooks aren't reading. Yes, they are. I got the story. Storytelling began with people orally telling them. It counts. Thank you. Next. As for ratings, I had a pretty good month. I did give 1 book a 2-star and I gave 2 3 stars, but I gave 5 4 stars and I had 1 5-star read. I did mention in my 2019 goals, I think, there was a video I talked about, or at least I talked about it with myself, wanting to rework my rating system, because I noticed I gave a lot of 3 stars and quite a lot of 5 stars last year, but barely any 4 stars. So I'm definitely trying to like figure it out and give more 4 stars and just have 5 stars for like the I want to reread this, or this book's very special kind of thing. Saying that, there are a couple of books that I gave 4 stars to that at the time I was like, oh, this would have been a 5-star last year if I was still using my like system. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, those 2 books kind of should be down at 3 stars. So I don't even know how my own system is working right now. Ratings are so subjective, reading is subjective, and my thoughts on books change all the damn time. So we're just going with it. Obviously, the majority of my books were YA, 6 to be exact. 2 were middle grade and 1 was adult. Middle grade was one of my goals for the year. I mean, it's only February, but like, I am pretty pleased. I put 1 middle grade on my TBR, so the fact that I have read 2, I am pleased with me for that. As for adult fiction, it's something that I know I should be kind of branching out into a bit more. I have a lot of adult thrillers on my shelves that I should like to get to because I keep buying them. So I'm gonna try and get through more each month, but it's not gonna be like a focus. So we'll see if that number improves much or if it stays the same or not at all. And this one should be no surprise, 8 of the books were fiction, 1 was non-fiction. I am not a massive non-fiction reader, however I am very much in like a mindfulness and just personal development kind of zone right now in my life. I talked about it in my January haul, I think, but I am awaiting assessment for mental health things and diagnoses, and it's all just a kerfuffle. And if there's things that I can do myself to just kind of get through days easier, then I will give it a bash. Spoiler alert, so far the self-help books, not that helpful. Genres were quite varied. Like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, was it that varied though? But like, we're just going with it. So 3 of the books were contemporary. 1 was romance, but like it was basically a contemporary romance, so, which is strange because like my favorite type of books are like mysteries. Yeah, I seem to always read contemporary. Speaking of mystery, 1 was a mystery. I read 2 fantasy. Who is she? I read 1 self-help book and 1 short story / novella. These next statistics are sort of diversity based, and there's obviously so many more categories I could go into, but I just kind of went for the main ones that are the easiest to track and that are going to be relevant to pretty much every book. So gender, I have read 7 books written by women and 2 books written by men. So I don't pick books up based on gender. Like I don't care. You know, I know like there's a consensus that like men don't know how to write teenage girls and stuff, but they do know how to write teenage boys, I feel, and both books actually featured teenage boys as the main characters. So I just obviously have more female authors on my shelves and that's what I picked up, but I also do want to support women. Woo. Cue the meninists going mental. The next category I am not pleased with, and again it comes down to me not caring, and in some respects it's good to just not care like if somebody is this gender or that gender, but I think I need to make more of a conscious choice at times when I'm browsing books and things. When it comes to race, and I've went by race of the author, just because I could read like 10 books and them all be about characters of colour, but them all be written by white people, and that's not good, you know. I want to support the diverse people. I just want to support non-white people, typically non-white men, but just not white people. Of the 9 books this month, 7 were written by white people. 1 was by a black author and 1 I've put down unknown. I tried to find, you know, like where the author was born, like checking on Goodreads or their websites and stuff, but not every author kind of tells you. So I have often, like, obviously sometimes you look at a picture and you're like, you are white, and the unknown was a case of, you know, I looked at this person and they had features that could be of another race, but they could also be mixed or they could be Caucasian, and I just didn't feel that it was right to put them into a category that I wasn't like, yeah, you definitely are like one or the other. So either way, if that person is not white, I still only read 2 not white authors this month, and I am not pleased with that. As I said, it partly comes down to me like just picking up books because I think they sound good and not caring, but that's not a good excuse. It's not an excuse at all. There's never an excuse for it. So I want to try and just make sure I'm picking up books by people of colour, people of different diversity, and obviously that's where like things like, you know, mental health, disability, just illness in general, sexuality and stuff, that could all come into like a statistic, but not all the books kind of deal with that. So I also don't want to be like, oh, this author is straight, because if they're not writing about, you know, sexuality and something, it doesn't matter. So obviously it's never going to be in depth enough to get a true insight into, what is the phrase, diversity, but it's a start, and I need to get some non-white people read. And I've also been tracking location, and I've sort of been unsure how to go with this. I was like, will I do it by where the author's from or where the book is set? And I think I've settled for where the book is set. So I have 5 books this month that were set in the USA. 3 that I've put an X next to, so that means like fantasy or just, you know, like non-fiction. Like it doesn't, like, okay, non-fiction if it's a biography it kind of counts, but you know, if it basically, if it's a fantasy world or if it's like a self-help book, it's an X because it doesn't count. And I read one book that was set in Scotland, so yay. One of the problems I'm having with tracking location is usually it's very obvious, but I've been going back through previous years of reading and I'm like, okay, I know this book was set in like a culture I'm familiar with, but was it the UK or the USA? So I need to try and make a mental note when I'm reading to actually like jot it down before I forget. And those are my stats. That took way longer than I wanted it to, so wow. So now that you've listened to all of that drabble, I'm going to show you the books. I did a poll on Twitter asking what order you guys like to hear about books, be it the order that they were read in, highest to lowest, lowest to highest, or other, and 54% or something like that said the order they were read in, so that's how you're getting it. So my first read of 2019 was Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This is a novel in verse. I wasn't sure what to expect of this and it wasn't what I got. However, I still very much enjoyed this and I gave it 4 stars. This is one of the books that I kept thinking like, do I want to give it 3 stars instead? Because I don't feel like it hit me. It didn't resonate with me and make me emotional like most other novels in verse have. But I'm going to leave it at 4 stars because that's how I felt afterwards. So I think it maybe did have an emotional impact at the time, but moving forward it's just kind of cool. Then my 5-star read came with my second book of the year. I am gobsmacked. It was also my first middle grade of the year and it is a book I should have read like 2 or 3 years ago when it first came out, and that is Sky Song by Abby Elphinstone. I freaking love Abby Elphinstone. I read her Dream Snatcher trilogy. I do not talk about it enough. It is a middle grade that is just amazing. Blew my mind. It's one of the only series I have completed, and when I say completed I mean like I read it. I remember getting an arc of the second book, so I went and bought the first book, read it, read the second book, and the minute the third book came out I was like, mine, read it. And then I had like such a book hangover from it, but it was not like a book hangover where I couldn't read anything else. It was like an Abby Elphinstone book hangover. So I was so excited when this came out, but I was like, I can't read it yet because I don't want to not be with Moll and Griff. And I guess I was just like so enraptured by Abby's writing and her story that she had with the Dream Snatcher that I was worried about how this one would be, but like I shouldn't have worried. Abby is so incredible. This woman, she is a god or a goddess. Like she's just incredible. She doesn't just write her books, she doesn't just research her books. You know, as writers, we're like, hey, you know, I want to write about maybe this culture, I'll do some stuff online, maybe I'll talk to some people. No. This girl, this woman, sorry, literally travels the world and spends time with people from the cultures or like inspired cultures that are inspiring what she wants to write about. And you can tell, you know, you can just tell that she has really lived these experiences, which is so crazy when she was writing like fantasy and adventures and stuff, but like, she is amazing. This is also, I believe, a standalone novel, or if anything it's just gonna have companions. Like it's not a series, like a major series. I might be completely wrong, but I feel like Eska and I have forgotten Flint. I feel like this is the only book we get with Eska and Flint's story, which you don't get enough of. So I absolutely adored this, and I just need Abby to bring out all the books so I can read all the books, and I'm thinking I might reread The Dream Snatcher this year because I loved it so much. Another 4-star read for me was We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. So everyone raves about this book, right? And I always was like curious about it, wanted to read it, and then I won Chinoa's giveaway, her channel will be linked below. And I was like super excited to get to it, and I didn't really know what to expect, and it wasn't what I got. I don't know what I thought, but it was just such a surreal experience. Not so much reading the book itself, but afterwards. So I know a lot of people gave this like 5 stars. They think it was like mind-blowing. But I think for me, a lot of the stuff it dealt with, like the sort of philosophies and like, what's the word, just sort of social dilemmas and stuff that it dealt with, are things that I've thought about a lot. So obviously, if you don't know, the character in this is getting abducted by aliens, and they're like, hey, press the button and save the world. He's like, the world's shit, let's just die. And I do remember, I remember finishing this book and sitting at like 1 in the morning or something like that, thinking to myself about the world and dying and the point of everything, and like, you know, would I press the button and all this stuff. And like, I wasn't being deep, I was just lighthearted, like reflecting. And that night I had a dream that involved like my teeth falling out. And if you guys don't know, dreaming of your teeth falling out is usually a sign of your subconscious thinking about death and growing old. And it was just like, this book literally made my subconscious think of that in such a level that I was dreaming about it. So yeah, this is the other book that I kind of feel like knocking down to 3 stars, but in the end I'm keeping it at 4 because that's what I felt within the first few days. Like, my rule of changing ratings is really only with rereads or like within like 48 hours. But I can see why people adored this. It just didn't have that spark for me, and I did kind of find myself lugging through it waiting for stuff to happen, which is why I was gonna put it down to 3 stars. But just the ending of it and the way it made me think, it's a 4 star. Why is my battery gonna die? This is not good. Then I read some NetGalley arcs on my Kindle, which I am now obsessed with. I know, sorry. It's probably gonna die the same as my fucking camera. But the first one I read was The Quiet You Carry by Nikki Barthelmess. I gave this 3 stars. It was about someone who like ends up in the care system, and it was a little bit underdone, but like it was good. And the rep, this is one of the things I was talking about in like my statistics, the author herself went through the care system, so it is own voices in that sense. So whilst I did only give it 3 stars, I enjoyed my time while reading it and I don't regret reading it, so worthwhile. I then went straight on to another NetGalley arc and I finally read Broken Things by Lauren Oliver. I really enjoyed it, but I also can't really remember what happened, so it was a bit weird. I also called, that was it, I called who did it. I remember there was like kind of foreshadowing and I was like, oh, that's it, that's who killed them. And then I just kind of had to wait for the rest of people to figure it out. So enjoyable. I cannot believe how fast I'm having to go through this now because I spent so long on freaking statistics. I then read another 4-star read and that was A Portable Shelter by Kirsty Logan. This is a signed copy because Kirsty's Scottish and she must live, I think she's in Glasgow, maybe Edinburgh, but she comes and signs books in the Waterstones, so I got a signed copy. This is just a collection of short stories. It's like a novella about these 2 women who are having a child and they tell the baby story. It's really cute and it's very much like little fairy tales, and some of them were just very confusing and I was like, what is happening? But I enjoyed it. I love Kirsty's writing, it's so magical, so I can't wait to read The Gloaming by her very soon. I gave 2 stars to my non-fiction book, The Teenage Guide to Stress by Nicola Morgan. This is alright, this is where I need more battery. If you are a teenager, it'll be helpful. If you just want to dive into sections, it's also quite helpful, but I found, as obviously I'm an adult, I'm not the demographic for it, I didn't think it went deeply enough and it very much brushed over things, and it just, the way it talked about things like autism in particular, it basically turned around and was like, if you're autistic, you will know by now. And that is so wrong, particularly for girls. It described autism the male way. It's got different traits for boys and girls, and it described it very stereotypical male. And girls are completely different, and that is why they tend not to be diagnosed until late teens or sometimes even in their like 40s and 50s. So I just hit myself in the face with it. Wasn't pleased with that. 2 stars. Me. Spoiler alert, we're kind of going the same way with self-help in February. My penultimate book was The Kissing Booth by Beth Reekles. I am saying not much on this except I gave it 3 stars and that's probably me being nice. This was so cringy, nothing more. Hopefully going to be doing a rant review. So the battery died when I got to the last book, so I am just going to film this clip on my phone because it's going to be very brief. hopefully you guys like stats, because that is going to be the only quality part of the video. My final read, oh my god, don't tell me the chair's going to fall, that's the last thing I need. My last book of 2019, Jesus, of January 2019 was Warrior Cats Into the Well by Erin Hunter. Oh my gosh, everything's falling apart. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? I listened to Warriors on audiobook. I borrowed it from my library, like on the app. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know about the Wildcats series as a kid. My arm hurts. So I missed out entirely growing up on this series. But when I first heard about it, I was like, I need to read it. And it's taken me like 5 years, but I finally listened to it. Really enjoyed it. Would definitely consider continuing on if I can find the audiobooks. And yeah, this wrap up, oh my god. What? Like, I know I said it was a mess, but like it really became chaotic mess. I am shooketh. So with that, thank you for watching. If you're watching all the way to the shoddy shaky camera, write that in the comments, shoddy shaky camera. And I guess I will see you guys in my next video. Right, bye.